1. I met Justin while working campus security at a local community college here in Iowa. My first day of work was his last day of work when we had a domestic call in the parking lot where a student had punched his girlfriend. The police were called and they took it from there. Justin failed to write a report and was let go. In the 12 hours of working with him, I found him personable, friendly, and funny. We both liked off-roading, guns, hunting, and other hobbies, so we became friends. Over the years of being friends, I noticed he would give the shirt off his back to help another. He liked to embellish or just straight up make up stories. My soon-to-be wife and I soon became close family friends with Justin and his wife Larissa. Larissa was sweet, kind-hearted, soft-spoken, successful, and an amazing cook. After a few years, Justin starts to take a turn for the worse and begins lying about mundane things, like as simple as what he had for lunch, or how he saw such and such a band when he was deployed. The issue with his fantastic Navy experience is he could never keep his job title straight. He would say he was a navigator, then he would say he was a SWIC, then something different. He would claim PTSD caused his lives, and we would just move on. Over time, my soon-to-be wife and Larissa became best friends, and she almost became part of our family in a way as well as Justin. We noticed Justin was spending a lot of time with a member of our local Jeep Club's daughter, Billy, Tony being her father. The Jeep Club was a huge part of our lives, and we would do camping trips, road trips, off-road trail rides, and even obstacle courses. Billy was 17, and Justin was in his late 30s. They were occasionally together, leaving Larissa to hang out with us. Justin went so far as to buy Billy her prom dress, and was just very uncomfortably attached to Billy. Tony calls us, asking if we know where Billy is, as he had not seen her since that morning, and it was getting to be dinner time. We told him she was with Justin and they had gone fishing. Tony said they had stopped by his house and saw Justin's Jeep parked in the driveway, but no one answered. He pinged his daughter's cell phone, and it showed it was at Larissa and Justin's house. Larissa went home, and literally caught them in just underwear. Justin somehow explained it away, and all was well. Mary and I quickly put Justin on our B list, but he was still set to be my best man and Larissa a bridesmaid for our upcoming wedding. As the wedding comes closer, Justin keeps going down a spiral, and Larissa keeps forgiving and taking his word for it. A few days before the wedding, Larissa tells us she can't come to the wedding because she has to go pick up Justin's 2 kids from a prior marriage in Georgia. Mary was bummed, but had a friend take her place so our wedding party would be even. It's wedding day, and we were setting up and very busy as we did the catering ourselves and the planning and everything. Justin calls me and asks if he can bring a +1, and I say sure without really thinking about it. People start to arrive, and everything is running smoothly until Justin shows up with his +1. We will call her Danny. Justin introduced her as a friend he met at work, but Mary and I know better. Trying to see if Danny knows she's being played, we ask where Larissa is. He says she's picking up his kids and will be back tomorrow. The only time Danny batted an eye was when he called her a friend from work. We move on and don't dive into it as we still have a lot to do. The wedding ceremony goes off without a hitch, and we start the reception. It's open bar and good music, the usual wedding things, the speeches, food, drink, games, and tossing of flowers and undergarments. As the night goes on, Justin and Danny are huddled in the corner. However, we need Justin for his speech. We drag him out onto the dance floor and he tells his speech. Meanwhile, Mary is talking to Danny, asking her how they met, who they were to each other, and telling her about Larissa. Danny is shocked and quite pissed. We give her a stiff drink and the night goes on. Dancing and drinking is all that's left, and the pictures start flashing. We take pictures of everyone, including Justin and Danny, and including some kissing photos. The whole night we were sending these to Larissa via Snapchat. Eventually my aunt, mother, and a few others confront me because they heard Danny is a mistress. We explain it's not our business, but we are handling it. This not being good enough, the family confronts Justin and Danny and tells them to leave. As soon as they leave, I call Larissa and tell her everything. The call. Hey Larissa, it's Chris. We need to talk when you get back. We have some bad news, and evidence this time. She asked if it's marriage ending or something else. I say marriage ending. The next day, my Snapchat had a ton of screenshot notifications, all from Larissa, and Larissa calls saying she will be at our house in an hour. The plot and the revenge. Larissa shows up in tears and shaking with anger. We try to calm her, but this is her moment to melt down. She tells us how he hasn't touched her in months, how they found out she can't have kids and since then he's been super distant, how he gets messages at odd times and won't check them when she's around, how she caught Billy and him but was too blind to see it. On and on she went, about how he keeps getting fired from jobs. He's spending all her money on Jeep parts and cash withdrawals from ATMs. She runs out of fuel eventually, and we ask what she wants to do. We veto her first answer for legal reasons, but we plot our revenge. We will take everything from him, starting with kicking him out, with only items he paid for with his money. We go to Larissa's house and change the locks. We gather up Justin's clothes and a few other things he paid for. I grab his PS4, and Larissa says no, she paid for that. We dump it all in the curb. The next thing is the Jeep he loves so dear. The Jeep being fully in Larissa's name, paid for by her. The parts added, also paid for by her. We drive to the bar where he works, and using the extra key, we take the Jeep and stash it at a Jeep Club member's house, having filled him in entirely with what's going on. The struggle. Justin apparently was not going down without a fight. Larissa had stayed the night at our house, and the next morning she calls telling us Justin had broken into her house and taken all the electronics, some of the furniture, and even pictures off the wall, as well as cut up the mattress and broke some pictures. He also took the remaining keys, including one to her Jeep. Larissa tells us she called the police, but they won't do anything. I call my friend who's an officer and see if he could help. He is the same officer I asked about when we found out Justin was sleeping with Billy. At that time, he says she's 17, an adult in Iowa, nothing he could do. This time he said they're married and both dwelling, and have a legal right to the home. Unless he does something threatening or illegal, it's a civil matter. It doesn't take long for Justin to cross that line, though. Larissa calls us and tells us that Justin had tried to steal her Jeep from work, but she had brought the club and locked it to her wheel. The Jeep ended up in traffic with the door wide open, and Justin was arrested for it. Larissa finally got what she needed to get a restraining order and a breath of air as we moved ahead. Now we had taken his car and his house, but he was still in town causing trouble for anyone he thought took part in this. The only thing he had left was his job, which we were sure he would lose on his own, but we needed to give it a shove. We had found his discharge papers from the Navy. Turns out he was a navigator and nothing more. It also showed he was dishonorably discharged. We make contact with Danny, and she tells her side of the story and tells us she wants to get revenge as well. Larissa, who had full access to the iCloud and had seen all the women Justin had messed with, reached out to all of them. 2 more were willing to join for the final move. The final move is to take his discharge papers to the bar, which prided itself on hiring veterans and supporting veterans. With all the women he had messed with and lied to and caused a scene. This was partially ruined when the owner walks out and meets us all in the parking lot. She's not having it at her bar. We all tell her what he's done to us and that he lied when he applied to work there and handed her his papers. She reads them and hands them back. She says to stay there, that Justin will be out shortly and will need a ride. We wait. We wait and out lopes Justin, red-faced and clearly pissed. He starts yelling if we are happy, that we have taken everything from him, that he is going to sue and end up owning Larissa's house. Larissa out of the blue says no, we haven't taken everything yet, but we will if you don't leave. He laughs and asks, "Oh yeah? You took my house, my car, and my job, what's left?" Larissa says, "Your kids. Now that you have nothing, you had better move back home, because if you don't, we will send everything to your ex, and she will take you to court, and without me to support you, you have absolutely nothing." We leave to find out. He called his mom, who paid for a one-way ticket back to Texas. We still gave the information to his ex, but don't know what came of it. 2. 4 years ago, I worked in a store for a large, well-known and well-hated telecom in Canada. I started out as a sales rep, then was quickly promoted to assistant manager because I'm a fast learner. I constantly crushed sales targets and always offered to train staff for new store openings. Joe, the regional manager, seemed to like me and was nice, which I thought was because I'm the only woman in a store with all men. But tenured sales reps warned me that he was always nice to sales reps and rude to managers. One day our store manager, SM, Rick, gets fired for skipping work to watch a hockey game. He was actually seen on TV in the front row stands cheering after calling in too sick to move, and a few co-workers went out with him afterwards where he drunkenly bragged about calling in sick to see said hockey game. Joe didn't hire a new SM because of cost, so he asked me to run this store, but without the title or pay. No problem, I love my job and the staff. I even come in on my days off to make sure the staff are okay and check on supplies. I'm also the first black ASM in the region in ages, so I felt like I had something to prove. A few months go by, and the customer comes in wanting to open up a small business account with 6 lines. I verify the company is real, credit check, HST number, etc., and process the sale for her. 4 black iPhone 7s, a rose gold iPhone 7 Plus, and a BlackBerry. Massive commission for me, even bigger commission for Joe. Joe comes to the store the next day wanting to talk about the sale. I thought I messed up along the way, or it got flagged for fraud. Nope, he was pissed that I sold the store's last rose gold iPhone 7 Plus, instead of holding onto it because he wanted to take it out of inventory and give it to his daughter. For free. Which is against company policy. And the rose gold 7 Plus was on back order. I tell him that it's better for us to sell the phone, and I didn't know he wanted to take it out of inventory to give it away, and it's against company policy anyway. What happens next is this grown-ass 6'5" man throws a tantrum. I'm talking fists balled up at the sides, shrieking, "You don't run anything here, this is my store, you're not the store manager. My name is on file as store manager and regional manager. Nothing happens in the store without my say-so. Nobody breathes unless I say so." I calmly straighten out my uniform, nod, thinking, "You run shit and I just work here." Got it. Alright, Denzel, you're gonna learn today. Cue malicious compliance. He leaves and the other staff ask WTF that yelling was about. I say, "Well, boys, I don't run shit, I just work here. If you need anything, and I literally mean anything at any time, call Joe." I stopped ordering, scheduling, etc., and did nothing for the next 2 days before my previously scheduled upcoming 4 days off. Day 1 of my day off, and one of the staff called me in a panic. "Thick like grits, I noticed there's only 1 roll of toilet paper left. Can you stop by and order more?" I say, "Nope, sorry, call Joe if you need anything, and don't call me in my days off anymore." Click. My staff support me and ring Joe's phone non-stop for those 4 days, with the most mundane stuff. "Hey Joe, we're out of toilet paper, can you get us some?" "Hi Joe, the windows are dirty, what should I do?" "Yo Joe, what's the schedule for next week? Thick like grits didn't make one."
"Yeah, Joe, we're trying to process a bring your own device monthly plan, but I don't remember what the dummy IMEI is. And I can't continue in the system without it. What is it?"
"Hey Joe, we're out of SIM cards, so can't process any more sales involving phones at all."
"Hey Joe, we're on our last few sheets of printing paper, so can't print contracts."
"Hey Joe, I came in early to set up the new marketing, but I noticed there's a light bulb out in one of the fixtures. What do I do?" "Joe, Andy left roast chicken bones and cake in the break area out overnight. Now the store is overrun by ants. Please send help." Joe calls and texts me non-stop, but I'm off for the next 4 days, so I ignore everything, sit at home, bake some cookies, spend time with my boyfriend, now husband, hit another mall and go shopping, get my nails done, get my hair done, and relish in the thought of Joe's stupid face stressed out at an ant infestation, and his stupid eyes bugging out of his head every time my staff call asking for toilet paper. I come in for my next shift relaxed, fresh silk-pressed hair and killer nails, and Joe is already waiting for me in the back.
Thick like grits, why is the staff calling and asking me ridiculous questions the last few days? Why are we running out of critical supplies that halt sales?
Well, Joe, you told me that nothing moves without your say-so, and that I don't run anything in this store. You do. So I told them if they need anything to call you, the person who runs the store. Cue the confused Pikachu look on his face.
Not like that, I mean like, just please run the store as you see fit. There are ants everywhere and the floors are sticky, and I brought you guys some SIM cards.
He scurries out of the store. I graduate from university that year and apply for a role at head office. Joe got upset and said he didn't want to lose me at the store and dangled the thought of making me store manager if I stayed. Oh well. At that point I just wanted out. I aced the interviews and got hired. I've been here ever since. And never have to interact with Joe. Fuck you and the ants, Joe. 3. This is a story from about 6 years ago, back when I worked as a waitress. The summer between grade 11 and 12, I worked at a small, family-owned restaurant about a 20-minute drive from my house. I lived fairly middle of nowhere, so this restaurant and 2 others served basically the whole county. So even during the dead time of winter, we were often busy. But we're also directly on a path from a big city to a large lake, so we're especially busy in summer. The people that ran the restaurant were a married couple. The wife, Sandra, was genuinely lovely, but the husband, Marvin, had a very short temper. I think I can count the number of times he talked to me without yelling on one hand. I picked up on the job easily enough. I'm very extroverted and friendly, so a lot of the customers loved me. Sandra decided to train me to do the opening shift at the restaurant. She would stay in the back and help me with prep and other things as I got used to the setting. Marvin was against this from the onset, saying I wasn't there long enough to be taking on this commitment. The malicious compliance took place about midway through June. After 2 weeks with Sandra helping me out, she stops coming by. So I was there with a singular cook until lunch, when I got relieved by another staff member. It just so happens that the next few weeks were going to be gorgeous weather, so my first week without Sandra we get slammed. The waitress that relieves me, Bonnie, is my senior, so as Sandra and Marvin have told me, Bonnie can ask me to stay and help out, and it's like them asking me to stay. Bonnie asks me to stay and help out every day that week. Marvin sees my time clocked in and out and freaks out, saying he knew I wasn't trained enough, and that I was using that excuse to get more hours. Even though I was getting 25 plus every week and had a second job, I knew better than to say anything back, and then he told me I wasn't allowed to stay past my time anymore. I confirmed with him that no matter what, I shouldn't stay past my time. He yells that unless him or Sandra specifically tell me to stay, I can't stay past my time. I smile and tell him no problem. So I'm opening all of next week, and like the week before, we're slammed. It looks like there's going to be no reprieve as my time to clock out comes. I tell Bonnie I'm leaving, and like usual, she asks me to stay. I shrug and said Marvin told me explicitly I couldn't take her word for asking me to stay. Bonnie is pissed. She agrees that I can leave, and phones Sandra and Marvin. Sandra phones me, and asks me if I can come back, but I'm already at home at this point and I refuse. So her and Marvin have to leave their house to go help out. I come into work the next morning to open, and both Sandra and Marvin are there. Marvin starts yelling at me about how I just left when it was so busy, and I calmly remind him I was told to leave, unless him or Sandra specifically requested it. He's grumpy and says I should know what he meant. So I ask if I can take the relieving waitstaff's word for asking me to stay. He disagrees, and instead I have to phone him before I leave. Sandra starts arguing with him, saying that's ridiculous, and to just let us make the judgment call as we're the ones out there and know what's happening. But Marvin is sticking to his guns, and Sandra just rolls her eyes and walks away. So obviously here comes Malicious Compliance Part 2. I phone him at the end of every one of my shifts, even when I have to close or it's dead. I always said I just wanted to be sure this time since he was so upset last time. This lasts for a little over a week before he finally gives up and says, "It's fine if I or another waitstaff make a judgment call to stay past time if it's busy." 4. So when I first started college, I worked in this small pizza shop the students could use their meal plans on. If you don't know what a meal plan is, it's basically you pay a set amount per semester and can swipe a card to eat whatever you want, with rules depending on how much you paid. Now I have to say, pizza was awesome, high quality ingredients, interesting combos of toppings and really good salads. But we were a test kitchen. This brand had never been anything other than a sit-down and enjoy style of pizza. So, turning into a fast food place was difficult. We weren't that busy normally, good days $800, bad days maybe $250. When he came to see how we were holding up, the brand owner, the one who created the entire store name, told us to only set enough dough to use that day. Absolutely no more. We made the large Sicilian style and it took 4.3 pounds of dough per pizza. If you didn't want it to be thin in places, you'd round it to 4.5. So any given day we'd go through roughly 60 to 80 pounds. We had to let it rise for a few hours cause it was a yeast base. Now, on any day this was no big deal. Get down to have a pizza, stretch a dough enough and let it rise, easy, until the end of semester came. The compliance. Now till this point we weren't selling as much as our big boss would have liked, so for the last 2 months of the semester, he was in-house breathing down our necks for the slightest thing he could see his waist. He was also pressing us to sell as many more pizzas as we could. Oh boy, did we. For those of you who have never had a meal plan, no one uses all of the meals they've paid for. Most people end up with like 20 or 30 left. They'll buy a bunch of food for a party and be done with it. But there are ones that end with near 100. That is where this goes. I worked from 9 AM to 6 PM these last few weeks because my finals were done and it was easy money. So I had heard people saying how they were going to use their meals and just buy a bunch of food. I even offered to take down orders if they wanted to let us know ahead of time. By the last day, I had orders for over 65 pizzas for multiple people. Being the good employee I was, I told our big boss about it. He was impressed, and set out extra for the day when we started the prep. I also knew it was not even close to enough. Most college kids don't think about calling ahead for really big orders. They just expect to be able to get it. So there were going to be plenty of those kinds of people. He said the words that doomed our kitchen. "If we need more as the day goes, we will get it as needed." 6 employees and our kitchen manager, we'll get to his role in a bit, just gave up and went with it. So the day went on. 11 o'clock came and immediately we had orders non-stop for 3 or 4 pizzas each. We had the pre-orders already prepped and rising, so each time we took chunks out of the dough laid out, our boss got more and more nervous. By 3, we were out of raised dough and were scrambling to get the chill stuff to rise enough to stretch. 4 o'clock, and all the other restaurants around us had closed because they were out of supplies and had went home. We were still catching up. Our big boss is red-faced, pissed off, and trying to blame us for all his bad planning. Then the final blow came in the form of 2 frat boys and their entire house. They asked if there was a limit on the number they could order. I was on register and looked by my kitchen manager, Stephen, and asked. He got the most devilish smile and said, "As long as you don't mind a wait, we can sell you as many as you can buy." These 2 mad lads bought 25 pizzas apiece. They were having a final party and wanted to blow the rest of their meals on it. As soon as I called out the order to our big boss in the back, All I hear is a frantic,
"How many did you say?"
He comes running up fast, looks over the receipt, and all the color drains from his face. He tries offering a refund, but it has to go through the school and can take over a week. Had to deal with a brat mom and her child learning this. So in the end, he has to stay and help us make them. It took over 6 hours to cook them all. Stephen emptied the ingredients over the pizzas so they were absolutely loaded. We all got paid overtime, and Stephen quit the following week. Listen to your employees. Epilogue. On our last day, Stephen pulled us all into his office and gave us all $50 out of his own pocket because we never should have had to put up with that brain-dead ass monkey, and that he was sorry we had to. To this day, one of my favorite managers. I should mention that when the next semester started, the entire restaurant had been remodeled. A completely new one was in its place with Stephen back as the manager, looking like the cat that caught the canary. He said Big Boss pulled his place out, and we were free to choose the one that replaced it. He offered us our jobs back with a 50-cent raise. We almost quadrupled our daily business, and the other 3 places were a little salty we were doing so well, but it was all good. Never had another problem like that again. 5. I used to work as a junior admin for a medium-sized web hosting company. The actual job title went a little bit different, but junior admin is essentially what the work amounted to. The team I worked for is a sort of white gloves premium managed hosting service, with a fairly steep monthly cost, intended to provide hosting support to mostly medium businesses that were paying for fairly high-powered VPS, or dedicated servers, or several. On my first day on the team, I had my first interaction with one of our regular callers, we'll just call Dan. Dan is extremely paranoid about his server security, and virtually everything running on his server is completely customized with third-party software we do not provide support for. I later found out that everyone else on the team intentionally avoided picking up Dan's chats, and letting me walk into that interaction with Dan blindly was a sort of welcome to the team hazing ritual. When you initiate a support contact, be it via support ticket, chat, or phone, you have to provide either a password, pre-generated access hash, or passphrase set up by the account owner before providing support and disclosing potentially sensitive customer information. Any one of these 3 methods would serve to verify account ownership and allow full access to the account, including making additional purchases, canceling services, and pretty much anything else. This was not secure enough for Dan. Dan insisted that before any support is rendered, 2 of these methods have to be provided. As company policy only calls for 1, Dan's preferences were simply annotated as a sticky note on the account, which is easy to miss. In my first interaction with Dan, he voluntarily provided only 1 of the verification methods, and after verifying it checks out, I began addressing his support issue. Dan flies off the handle and loses it because I did not prompt him for a second verification method, and launches into a really long and drawn-out lecture on keeping his account secure. He eventually calmed down enough to let me do my job and provide him with support. Fast forward a few months, and more than a few additional interactions with Dan, raising support tickets for asinine questions like, "Who owns this IP address that shows it's been having blocked in my firewall logs? I demand a full security sweep of my server and make sure it isn't compromised." I see Dan shows up as waiting in the chat queue and groan to myself. The only other admin that worked that night was on lunch, and I was scheduled to go on lunch right as he gets back. Not only is interacting with Dan a complete nightmare, he also takes forever to get to the point, and it looked like lunch wasn't going to happen anytime soon. I accept the chat, the user provides the first verification method dutifully. I asked for a second verification method, not about to be yelled at a second time by Dan. The second verification method checks out too. I ask how I can help, and the person on the other end goes, "This isn't Dan, I'm his developer. Dan hasn't paid me for my work, so I want you to delete everything on the server." Working in this industry, I've come in contact with more than a few attempts of social engineering, and was completely taken aback by this guy's candor. He clearly knew our company policies, and knew that as long as the caller was able to verify the account and provide the necessary credentials, we would be forced to comply with their request. I quickly performed an external backup of all Dan's files. The person on chat did not ask me to delete backups, nor did he ask me not to take any, and deleted all of the site files, effectively taking down Dan's website. I will admit that this felt extremely satisfying, and taking a backup of Dan's stuff was a courtesy that I did not have to perform, given the circumstance, but knew my life would not be made easier if I hadn't done so. 20 minutes go by and I'm keeping my eye on the queue, entirely forgetting about lunch at this point. I knew Dan would call any minute now, and that I would not be able to dodge his calls at this point. Sure enough, Dan's call, no chat this time, comes in. From the moment I pick up the phone, Dan is screaming in my ear about getting hacked and how insecure our infrastructure is. It takes another 10 minutes for him to calm down enough to provide both methods of verification. Before verification, I was not able to provide any account information, as per policy. Once he was verified, he demanded to know what happened to his website. And with a calm I didn't really feel, I told him, "That was me. I deleted your site, Dan. Your developer started a chat and was able to provide both of the verification methods on your account, confirming account ownership. As per policy, this provides him with full access rights, and we are obliged to comply with the requests. This is not the kind of access a security-minded individual such as yourself should have given to a developer you stiffed on his bill." I told him that I slightly bent the rules for him and took a completely random courtesy backup of his files, right before the request to delete the site files came in. A few minutes later, I got Dan's site back up and running. No idea if he ever ended up paying his developer, but we changed his access credentials and passphrase at the end of the call, and Dan became a lot easier to work with from that day forth. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, number 51. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Right, when's this going up actually? Oh, Sunday. Right. I get muddled up sometimes. It was either iPop or this for Sunday, and it turned out to be this. Well, I'm going to, before I edit, I'm going to have some hot nudes, by which I mean noodles. A nice bowl of ramen, probably put some butter on bread, maybe a bit of cheese, fancy it up. Okay, I'm hungry and I'm making myself even hungrier by talking about food. I really shouldn't do that. So I'm going to keep the rest of the outro short because I need to get some food in my tummy. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.